Welcome to Mindful Monday. My name is Allison Knight, and I am the health coach for Employee Health Center. We are going to be coming to the end of our Mindful Way practice in the next couple of weeks, so we're going to start wrapping up. And in the last few weeks, we've been talking about seeing thoughts as thoughts, so trying to create a new relationship with our thoughts and recognizing them as mental events instead of the truth. And from there, we looked at thinking about our top 10 most unhelpful thoughts so that we're able to identify a pattern and identify our triggers and our signs to create an early warning system of when we start to go into this downward spiral or create a personal relapse signature. And sharing this with loved ones, significant others, family, so that they can help us recognize if we're not recognizing it ourselves, that we're starting to spiral into this path of destruction, of depression, of anxiety, of burnout, whatever it might be. From there, we moved on to kindness and action. So I had asked you to take a look at activities that you have to do daily, weekly, whatever it may be, and look at them and determine, do these activities or tasks nourish me? Do they give me life? Do they give me joy? Or do they drain you? Are they dampening? Do they kind of take away joy? We did this so that we could see that what we do affects how we feel, and more importantly, how we feel can be changed by what we do. So we then looked at creating a list of pleasure activities and a list of mastery activities. So the pleasure activities are activities that you just get a sense of pleasure and joy from by doing, and those mastery activities are activities that you get a sense of achievement out of doing. So the activities themselves might not necessarily be joyful, but you feel satisfaction after doing them. And last week, if you remember, we talked about how when you are in a depressed state, motivation works backwards. So you actually need to make yourself do the activity before you're actually able to feel like wanting to do it. And now that can be extremely difficult, but making yourself do something is going to help you feel better in the long run. Because if we don't do anything, we sit in that tiredness and that fatigue, and we just perpetuate that negative feedback loop. And we need to start pulling ourselves out of that deep hole. So now we're going to start talking about how do we create a sustainable practice. One of the things too to note is that doing that mastery and pleasure list is that when you're doing those activities, you want to do them as an act of kindness to yourself. You want to ask yourself the question, how can I best care for myself right now, instead of doing those activities as a way to get rid of the sadness or the unpleasant feelings that you're feeling, because that's that aversion again. We talked about that. We're not trying to get rid of those feelings. We're trying to acknowledge them and be able to move forward. Otherwise, we do get stuck in that negative feedback loop of unpleasant and uncomfortable and sad feelings. And so we're doing this as a way to take care of ourselves in this moment versus trying to get rid of those feelings. So to set up a sustainable mindfulness-based practice, you are going to set it up for you specifically. Out of everything that we've talked about body scans, we've talked about sitting meditation, mindful movement, the 3-minute breathing space, and we want you to come up with your own plan on how you are going to sustain your mindfulness practice. Remember, you might want to start small because you can always add to it instead of creating this big plan and then feeling like you aren't achieving it. And so for this week, I want you to set up a day log of your practices, and I want you to have 3 separate areas. So your intended practice, what you intend to do. Then once the day is done, what you actually practiced, and then take a moment to think about what did you learn? What worked for you, what didn't? Maybe some practice would work better. Maybe you want to, cut something out right now and maybe add it back in later, but determine what's a realistically sustainable practice for you to continue doing. One of the things you might want to automatically include is that responsive breathing space, because again, we've talked about how this is one of the best practices to turn to when we start feeling those unpleasant and negative feelings, because you can do it anywhere and you can do it quickly. So that might be the first thing you want to add. And now we're going to expand a little bit on the 3-minute responsive breathing space as well to the door of mindful action. And so as we come to the end of our responsive breathing space, remembering that the breathing space starts out with you becoming aware of your breath and that abdominal wall as it expands and contracts, gathering yourself, and then expanding that awareness to your body as a whole to include your posture, your facial expressions, any sensations you might feel, and then carrying that mindfulness into the next moments of your day. So once you've reached that point, you want to ask yourself, what do I need for myself right now? And how can I best take care of myself right now? So looking at that list of your pleasure and mastery activities, try doing something that gives you joy, or try doing something that gives you that sense of satisfaction, or act mindfully as best you can. Focus your attention on what you are doing right now, paying attention to that moment and the sensations in your body. Perform this as an experiment. Try not to prejudge how you think you're going to feel after doing these activities. That's going to take away from the experience. And consider a range of activities. Don't limit yourself to a few. Add variety. Don't expect miracles. Carry out what you've planned to do as best you can, and see the activities as helpful blocks in building your overall sense of control in the face of mood shifts. And there's no need to feel like you need to do an activity, just do it. Again, motivation works backwards when we're depressed. Whenever you notice any unpleasant feelings building up, any uncomfortableness, any tightness in the body, turn to that responsive 3-minute breathing space and then use that door of mindful action. Next week, we are going to take everything that we've talked about from the beginning, basically, to create our own personal action plan. So that's what we're going to do next week. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I hope that you have a wonderful and mindful Monday.